My name is Fairy. I am 24 years old. I'm going to tell you my story of abuse as a child and as an adult. I remember my mom and my dad, they loved each other. They both worked. Everything seemed happy and normal. Their divorce is what caused the chain reaction of things to happen in my life. When I was 2 years old, my parents split up and my mom took me because I was not her husband at the time's biological child. My father took the two other of my siblings with him. My mom's family, I guess, wanted to try to help mend their marriage and thought that putting all of the children together would solve that. So my uncle came and got me, saying that he wanted to keep me for a night to help my mom out. He kidnapped me and brought me to my other half of the family, my other siblings, and they very quickly got me and did not give me back. My mom, I remember her being very sweet and loving me a lot, but this family that took me in, they would tell me she doesn't really love you. She's strung out on drugs. Your mom's a she cheated on your dad. She doesn't love anybody but herself. We would have visitation, and visitation with my mom didn't last very long, but for the time that it did last, they would be like, "You're two-faced," because I would get excited because I knew my mom was about to come get me. And then they would start "Oh, you have visitation today, but we have to go do this," or "Your mom said that she's not going to pick you up, so we have to go do this," and we would not be home. So I was unaware that my mom was showing up to get me, and I wasn't there for her to get. So she would stick around for hours and then leave. I would say I was 5 or 6 sometime in there when all of the visitation stopped completely. So I didn't see, they quit talking about her unless it was "You're bad just like your mom." My siblings are my half siblings. However, I didn't know that until I was an adult. My father had a very big ego and he was a narcissist. So he believed everything revolved around him, that he was an innocent person in the divorce. They got divorced because my mom cheated on him, but that was the reason he felt they got divorced. My mom felt that they got divorced because he did not love her. They didn't have sex for 2 years before I was conceived, so obviously wasn't my father's. They had so many more problems than my mom cheating. He just wanted to be the innocent party. He didn't want to take any responsibility for his half. He was very abusive to her. My siblings and I all endured similar abuse to one another, but they had different reasons for disliking us. So for me, they did not love me and they beat me and they were harsh with me. They called me names and stuff like that. They thought I was an outside party. I was a child that wasn't supposed to be there. So I was a financial burden. And my sister, they loved her a lot, but when she hit puberty, the love that they had went in a evil direction. It was not love "I love you, my daughter." It was "I love you, you're going to be my wife." My brother, they just hated him. He was a hyperactive person. And he left at 7, or when I was 7. I didn't get to observe much of what happened to him. My brother and my sister stole the food stamp card and bought groceries and hid them because we weren't allowed to eat. He stole food, he put it underneath the deck, and he didn't tell anybody about it. And that was supposed to be to feed me, him, and my sister. And when they found out, they had my sister and brother lined up in the kitchen and were beating them. And my grandfather seen me watching from the staircase and he said, "She knows about it, she needs to get beat too." And so they brought me over there and I got beat alongside them. Me and my sister were raised to be wives one day, but it was for the gain of the people in the family, as if we were going to marry our own family. My father, when my sister hit puberty, he fell head over heels for my sister. He absolutely loved her to a point where it was disgusting. My grandmother, she loved her own son in that same sick way, but all they ever did was make out one time that I know of. She told me this when I was 6 years old, that she went into his room and made out with him when he was 13 because, like, I guess she thought that was the right thing to do with your son. So I think, like, she was actually jealous like a girlfriend would be. My grandmother would get jealous of us children being around my grandfather, which, I mean, I see why, because he was a pedophile, but I just can't understand looking at children as if they're adults. I remember the first time I was molested very clearly. My grandfather, he was very sick, so he couldn't leave his bedroom often. He would, like, call me up into his room, and my grandmother would encourage me to do that because she thought, like, he was lonely and she didn't feel like filling that gap for him. And we would watch TV, like movies, old movies, things like Shirley Temple. He would, like, try to get me to come sit in his lap, and he would talk to me about stuff like I was an adult friend, not like I was his grandchild. I know he used to, like, tickle me sometimes or do those little nursery rhyme games. One of these instances, I was sitting in his lap and he reached around and up my inner thigh, and I shut down, and I just, like, closed my eyes really tight, and I waited for it to be over, basically. He put his fingers inside of my shorts and touched me. I remember just sitting there, and in my head I was repeating to myself, just like, not this. No, this can't be happening. This isn't real. No. I don't know how many times that happened after that. I thought he was, like, my friend, like I could trust him, and he took advantage of that. My father didn't start being overtly sexual until we reached a certain age. It was around the same age that he was sexually assaulted by his mom. They were sexually assaulted from the time that they were young children, because they would, like, get me to come up in their bedroom and they would put movies on and they'd be, like, rubbing on me, and I always thought it was very uncomfortable, but, like, it's my family. I didn't really know, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm sandwiched between two adults. They would put on movies that had purposeful sexual, like, that was the point of the movie, basically. And they'd be like, you're gonna be like that one day, or you're gonna have hair down there one day, or it's okay to watch this, it's completely natural. Well, that kind of thing happened from when I was 4 years old all the way up until maybe I was 9 years old. When I learned to put up a wall for real and not go around anybody was around when I was 8 or 9 years old. And that was when I started to understand what sex really was. I started to understand that was supposed to be a private thing, and I didn't like it, and I was right for not liking it. I knew that my father was a pedophile, but I didn't know my dad is definitely a pedophile, because he would do things that were like he was testing the water. Like he was trying to see what he could get away with. He made us sleep in his bed as often as he could. Like, I didn't have a bedroom until I was quite a bit up there. And even when I was about 9 or 10 years old, when I had a bedroom, it didn't feel like that was my place to be because of that boundary being broken. So, like, he would pull us up in the bed with him, and he would, like, press himself against us really hard at night and, like, tell me, he would say, hold me. And he'd pull my arm, you know what I mean, over. Or he would say, get closer if I was laid in front of him. You know what I mean? And he'd pull me up on him. I always felt like I was, like, in the claws of an animal. Like, I felt like I had to sit stiff and not move. I couldn't even fall asleep like that. I would wiggle out and act like I fell off the bed. His bed had wooden boards boxed around it, so I would press really hard against the wooden boards. Over time, he stopped wanting me to be in his bed, and he would tell me to sleep in his closet. He had, like, a walk-in closet, and he would tell me to sleep in his closet, and my sister would be up in the bed with him. And that's around a time I was probably 7. I always felt like they don't love me. My dad doesn't really love me, because I guess I was confused. I was conflicted about, like, it wasn't comfortable sleeping in the bed with my dad, but now he doesn't want me up there with him anymore. And he wants my sister up there, but he doesn't want me. So I'd feel, like, abandoned in a way. My dad backed off and picked a favorite. I felt left out, or like I wasn't loved anymore. I always thought I wasn't allowed to talk about home life anywhere else. Like, I didn't know that I could have walked up to somebody and said, help me. From the divorce, it was hardwired into my brain that you're not allowed to talk about anything. Don't try to talk about anything. And if you do, it better be the narrative that I've taught you. But when I was 7, My brother ran away and he got out. He did. He got out successfully. He didn't ever have to come back. He moved in with my mom. He went and lived his own separate life. There was a massive shift of how everything went down at home. My dad latched onto my sister very hard. He quit talking to me, like he wouldn't acknowledge me. Because my dad latched on to my sister, my grandmother got jealous and tried to latch on to me with the same overbearingness that she gave my father. She treated me like a free therapist. So basically, she would tell me lots of sick things. I felt obligated to tell her that those sick things that she was telling me were okay. She told me that she wanted to be with my father. She made out with him when he was 13. She was switching out my grandfather's medication. She was using sweetener tablets that you would put in tea or something that looked like his heart medication because she thought that she knew better than his doctors. She told me that she wanted my dad and my aunt to get married, and they never did, and how disappointed she was in them for never doing that, and that it wasn't weird that they were siblings but they weren't actually blood related. She would talk like, your dad loves your sister more than both of us, right? He's only making her fat so that she doesn't find anybody else to love. That was another thing that my dad did. He would force feed us, but he really doubled down with my sister. My sister, I'm surprised that she doesn't have health problems like I do now. My grandmother, she thought she knew better than my dad about corporal punishment. She would still wait till my dad got home, and she would have already beaten us for things that didn't make sense. Like, you were too loud talking to your siblings. She'd grab me by the hair and either pull way high up so that I had no choice but be hanging from her hand, or way low down, and she would say if you would quit fighting it, it wouldn't hurt. She had a PVC pipe in the pantry, and it was full of yardsticks, like the thick, really long yardsticks. And she would basically beat us with those until they broke. And she wasn't satisfied until she got whatever reaction she was trying to get out of us. They quit beating my brother before he left because he got to a point where it didn't even hurt him anymore, and he would just laugh at him. And I think he did that because it was too much for him and he didn't want to give them what they wanted. With me, I couldn't help but react. I eventually did get to a point where I didn't cry out, but I still cried every time. I didn't shout or anything, but I still cried every time. They always put their hands on us, but they quit doing it daily when we got to an age where I remember them saying that they were afraid we were going to say something at school. I think that the last straw for me was a culmination of several straws. My sister got a job. She would tell me, don't tell them. I'm going to say that I'm working today. Don't tell them. I'm going to go have fun. And she would go be free. I didn't feel free to go to a friend's house once or twice. Seeing my sister go out, find a way to be free, really tempted me to run away. I would take the dog up the road, walking the dog, and go through the woods into the highway and just stare at the highway and think I could just go. I could just start walking and I would be free. I could just go. And I would get scared and think where am I going to go? And I'd come back home. She came home from work one day. She said, Mom got a hold of me on Facebook. I've talked to her. She says she can get us out of here. I'm going to go. I remember thinking oh my God, I might have a chance to leave. I might have a chance. My sister said, they're going to throw a phone in the bush outside for you. I'm going to give it to you and I'm going to leave. She left the next day. Right after I got the phone, she left. And I talked to my mom only a couple of times because I was just scared. I was scared to use the phone. I was terrified to even have it. They said you have 2 weeks to decide if you want to leave. I don't want to make you feel like you're forced to make a decision. You make it for yourself. Only took me a couple of days. I don't even remember how many days it was, but it was not long at all before I actually responded with an answer. And I told them I want to leave, but how are we going to do that? My sister said that she would come pick me up from school Don't tell anybody that they're never going to see me again. Don't say goodbye to anybody. Don't tell your friends. Definitely don't tell the Schocks. Don't tell them. Don't let them know that you're going to leave. She came and got me from school that day, but before I left, my grandfather asked me in the car, he said, I feel like you're going to leave. If you're going to leave, please tell me so that I can prepare myself for that. I won't tell anybody else. You don't have to worry about it. I didn't tell him that I was leaving, but I could tell as I was responding to that question, that he probably knew that I was going to leave. It was too much for me. I was like cutting myself aggressively, like bad. I still have scars all over my thighs, but I looked horrible. I was bleeding through jeans. I went to my mom's house when I was 13 years old. She lived with her parents. They were very nice people, very good-hearted people. They tried to get my mom like her own place so all of us kids could live with her together and have at least a few years of a normal life before we had to go into adulthood. My mom, like me, she's got mental health problems. She couldn't help some of the things that she was going through at the time. Like, I think she didn't feel good enough still, and I think she didn't realize that all of those years that she spent without us were over, and she didn't know how to respond to it, I guess. It was chaotic, but not in a bad way. Like, I still look back on the 4 years that I spent with my mom. It wasn't fully 4 years, but almost 4 years that I spent with my mom fondly, even though I tried to kill myself twice during that time period. My mom went to the mental hospital several times. I went to the mental hospital several times. My siblings quit talking for a little while. It was rough, but it was not the type of rough that I was used to. So I don't look at it as bad as my siblings do. I left that situation because my mom was struggling with alcoholism. I was struggling with alcoholism. When I was graduating high school, I graduated very early. I've always been really good at like academics and stuff like that. I signed up for college, but I signed up for college because I thought like I was gonna go somewhere with that, but I was not in the headspace to go to college. I wanted to be drunk. I wanted to be high. I wanted to be not thinking about what was going on in my life. When I started college, I made a friend. She's dead now. Her name is Haley. She took me to her hometown, which is Somerville, which is Topeka County. When I came here, I went to a Halloween party, and at the Halloween party, this was deplorable conditions for a family to live. The house that we went to for the party was in the middle of the woods. One of the walls of the trailer, an entire face, was rotted off. It was like raining in the trailer. I met a guy there, and I was not aware that I was meeting him and his girlfriend. I thought I was just meeting him. When I met him, I got a little bit of a crush on him, but I didn't know him that well, and I didn't communicate with him. Like, I didn't talk to him really. I just like acknowledged that he was there, and that was it. There was a house full of teenagers. I should have known that something was off about a grown man hanging out with a house full of teenagers, but I didn't. He started trying to drive me to college. He would take my friend Haley to college. We went to the same place, of course. He would hit on me, and he would send me Facebook messages. He's the reason that I stopped living with my mom. I essentially left my entire family to go live in a rotted trailer in the woods with a dude that wouldn't tell me he was living with his girlfriend. So I didn't know until like 2 weeks into living in this trailer that he had a girlfriend, even though he's calling me his girlfriend. You know, he's a 34-year-old man. I was 16, 17. I didn't know any better. I had no understanding of how relationships normally would work. I'll call him Sean. Me and Sean, we got married less than a year after we met. He told me that I would be his girlfriend. Like, you are my girlfriend, not will you be my girlfriend. You are my girlfriend. He said, you're going to move in with me. I moved in with him. Then 2 weeks of living there, I found out about his girlfriend. He drove me out into a field near where this trailer that I was talking about was. He said, when I was 19, I had 2 friends. They stole some from me. So I killed him and put him in a barrel and buried the barrel in the Chattanooga River. If I had to guess what age I was in my head at that time, I would say that I was 13 years old. I had no put 2 and 2 together that was a lie. Obviously, now that I'm an adult, yeah, he lied to me to scare me. He didn't want me to tell the truth about him, so he put me in a position where I was alone, vulnerable, and would believe anything that he said for him to get his way. After he told me that, I kind of felt like I was glued to this person, or I was gonna be in for it type deal. I didn't enjoy being with him, and 6 months after he told me that story, we were married. When we got married, it wasn't, will you be my wife? It was, we're getting married. I'm making arrangements. He had this old woman in his life. He would call her mom. She started paying for stuff before they really discussed it with me. So I felt financially obligated now to stick around and marry him. Plus I was pregnant. So I was like, well, I should marry him then, so that my baby has a dad. The day that we got married, my brother picked me up. He was like, I know you don't want to get married. I could take you right now. We could just leave, and you don't ever have to come back to any of this. You could act like none of this even happened. I remember tearing up, and in my head I was thinking, God, I wish I could. But I still was in a mental prison. I thought I had to get married. I would say the main contributor to why I can raise children like I'm doing now and be a good parent and do the right thing is because Jesus gives me a foundation to be a good person. And I feel like if there's anything I could do to help anybody else heal, it would be to tell my story and to tell people all of these horrible things happened to me. All of this happened, and I can forgive these people. If I ran into them at the store, I would not be rude. I can move forward and have a foundation, even if a foundation was stolen from me. My sister, several weeks or months ago, something like that, like 2 months, she messaged my dad and said, I would like to talk to you by yourself. He messages back, you mean you would like to talk to us? He's still not left the mental hold of his mother on him. He still lives with her. They still have a psychosexual relationship. It's going to be like that forever unless they find Jesus. They will always be sick. So there's no need to try to find closure